What's up, everyone? It's Nick from Team Nitro YGO here, and today I have a little bit of a different video for you guys. So normally this is a channel about Yu-Gi-Oh! The trading card game, and still is. But I wanted to talk about one specific card that has gotten me back into loving the game. Obviously, the last 5 years have been on and off content for a bunch of different reasons, but really the last 18 months, I have really been questioning my relationship with this game and deciding whether or not it's worth it for me to keep trying to pursue this game as a hobby. And I've got a couple of photos here. So this was from a case tournament that I played all the way back at the start of the year with a couple of buddies from locals. This was probably the last time that I was actively taking the game seriously. Obviously, I had my invite to Nationals. I had played the YCS that year. I had felt pretty confident about my game going into Nationals, and then just it all fell apart. Between a whole bunch of sets getting released, multiple ban lists, the dominance of Ryzeal and Malice, along with new decks, there just wasn't anything for me to play. There was nothing fun about the game. It felt like we were playing Go Fish, and there was just no point in me doing that for 14 rounds. So I took a step back away from the game, and I didn't play for like 8 months. Until recently, a notorious Labyrinth gamer by the name of Kaihari Zhuang recently posted this in a Discord that I'm in. It says, Lab players alert. Simultaneous going second into Mitsu and Draco Tail is really good. You can either main 0, 2, or 3 inside the rest. For those unfamiliar, Kai is a very good player, top-aided YCS Houston earlier in the year with the Labyrinth deck. And in this Discord, they have been chatting a lot of theory. This one particularly caught my eye because Simultaneous Equation Cannon is a card near and dear to my heart. I have multiple invites with that card in my deck list. Every single time I've resolved it, it is a unrivaled amount of dopamine. And to hear that this card was potentially playable gave me reason to play Yu-Gi-Oh! Again. So basically the whole point of this video, it is just a video essay about Simultaneous Equation Cannon. What is this card? Why are we playing it in Labyrinth? I've got a couple sample deck lists for you, and then we're going to come back to the wrap-up and figure out what both this card, Yu-Gi-Oh! And 2026 hold in store for me. So, let's start with Simultaneous Equation Cannon. For those who are unfamiliar with this card, it is right here on the screen. It was originally released in Legacy of Destruction. This set had the U-Bell cards in it, okay? Here's what it does. You banish a fusion monster and 2 Xyz monsters with the same rank from your extra deck, whose combined level and ranks equal the total number of cards in both players' hands on the field. Then you apply this effect. Return 2 of those banished monsters to your extra deck, an Xyz and a fusion, whose combined level and rank equal the level or rank of 1 face-up monster your opponent controls. Then banish every card they control. This is an unrivaled amount of removal for 1 trap card. Now, what makes this card so interesting? There is a lot of things going on with this card. It says a lot of numbers and it says a lot of words, but it really only does one thing. It's going to banish your opponent's entire board. Okay? And the interesting thing about this card is there is so much counterplay to this. It's unreal. The amount of skill that it takes to successfully resolve this card, and I'm not even talking about just the math. The math is incredibly easy. It's just simple addition with using different, just different numbers and multiples. That's all that this card resolves, or all this card requires you to do mathematically. I mean the skill in this card is making sure that the hand and field count matches what's in the extra. Making sure that you don't let your opponent go too ham, because if they do, they might have the Omni for the cannon. If you do it too early, you're not banishing enough cards and not getting full enough value out of your trap. Really what caught my eye about this card was Kai's earlier statement about this card potentially being good going second. The reason I think that he says that is because outside of exactly Mitsurugi, there is not a single deck in the format that is putting up like true Omni negation. Like, yes, Yummy has Herald, But most decks are not pure yummy, they are Mitsu yummy, and you are more scared of the Purification than you ever are about the Herald. Because the Purification not only negates your card, it makes them go plus, which is the most infuriating thing about that card. But Draco Tail has no Omni negates. Lunalight has one spell trap negate in Silverhound. The Rising Automat deck, I mean, it's FTKing you with hand looping, but in Engine, there are 0 Omni negates. It is a monster negate. So in theory, you can build your deck around this card, and it's just going to resolve. It's just going to resolve. And when it does, it has the potential to end the game immediately. There are so many 1-ofs in decks that if you banish with this card, you have successfully locked them out of the game. So for example, against the Mitsu Yummy deck, once you banish the Mitsu cards, because most lists are off of Kusanagi, they're just playing Habakiri, Saji, Prayers, Pre-Prep, Mirror. Once you banish the Saji, or the once you banish the Mirror, they really can't Ritual Summon anymore, because they don't have the ability to go get Ritual. Against the even Pure Mitsu, like this card can wipe a full Pure Mitsu board. Even like they can Prayers Tribute and do a bunch of stuff to like save cards, but you're still gonna get 5 or 6 cards off of this cannon against them. Draco Tail's only real counter is popping their own monster with Gulamel so that it messes up the math or potentially removes a monster with a level on their side of the board. And then obviously there's a whole bunch of rogue decks that don't care about this card, but there's also a ton of rogue decks that do care about this card. This is a fascinating little trap, and it's one that I've had my eye on for a long time. And obviously when I first played this card, when I first top 16 to regional with this card in my deck, it was during Ryziel Fiendsmith format, because people were ending on level 6, level 10, and like rank 8 monsters primarily in that format. So your cannon was always online, ready to banish the whole board for free. Oh, and Kashtira cards too, can't forget. If they're ending on 7s, we're clapping. So, the nice thing about this card, in Labyrinth specifically, it has so much synergy with the deck. So much. It's a normal trap, so you can trap trick for it. Lady can set it from the deck. It's a way to remove monsters from the field by a trap card, so it's going to proc all your stuff, your furnitures, your welcome, the lovely pop, the field spell reborn. The other thing about this card is that as the lab player, you have all the time in the world to figure out when to fire this. You can decide when it's best for you to fire it. And the last piece of synergy I'll say is the fact that this deck can turn 0 this card. Between Furniture pitching Backjack and Backjack hitting it, or Aureus for it because you play 6 copies between it and Trap Trick, it's just so well-rounded. And it is by far one of my favorite trap cards ever made in this game. But let's circle back around to the original point, right? Is that the theory behind this card is that it's supposed to be good going second into Mitsurugi and Draco Tail. Is that true? I don't have a large enough sample size to make a definitive conclusion. But I just want to do the thinking process here for a minute. So like we stated earlier, if there are decks running around with very little Omni negation, this card is fantastic. You will, like, it gives evenly matched vibes without wasting your battle phase. Really the only issue with this card is the opportunity cost of the extra deck. The extra deck is one of the most broken things about Yu-Gi-Oh!, if not the most broken thing about Yu-Gi-Oh! So the fact that you're saying, I would rather not have this resource that is full of some of the best cards ever made, and instead I'm going to play this fucking magenta card. That magenta card better do so much to warrant to denying yourself extra deck. Because even though Labyrinth is seen as a control-y, tempo-y style of deck, it can produce a mass amount of bodies, make massive link and synchro plays, and it's going first boards with the extra deck are honestly pretty good. Depending on how deep you want to go with the Unchained package, you can end on stuff like Rage linking off into SP for multiple disruptions. You can do a Bawaku stuff by pitching extra furniture cards. You can even just loop Chaos Angel over and over and over again. So the fact that you are sacrificing that to play this card better do everything. And it doesn't do everything, don't get me wrong. It does a lot, though. Non-targeting, non-destruction removal is very rare in this game. It's very, very rare. And this provides it tenfold, because it's banishing the whole board. So not only are you getting all the monsters, you're getting all the back row. It doesn't care if the cards are face up or face down. Unless it says unaffected by card effects, it is getting banished by this card. Really, the only time that this card is not activatable is if your opponent does not have a monster on their board with a level on it. So link strategies avoid this card, which is slightly infuriating. But even the link decks, I mean, outside of exactly Malice, even the link decks, they're going to put up an extra deck monster with a level or a rank, which makes this card activatable. So now that we've got that out of the way, let's think about it from this perspective, right? And does this card solve Labyrinth's problems? That's really one of the big questions we have to ask ourselves. What this card does in Labyrinth is mass remove the board, obviously. And it just has so many qualities that the deck already wants that I do think that you can get away with playing this card. And I think that given the current metagame status, I don't want to say this card's at an all-time high, because I don't think it is. But I think it's in one of the best spots it's ever been, outside of its initial wave during Snake Eye U-Bell format, when there was, like, decks just could not beat this card. They just couldn't. Like, if you banished a whole Snake Eye board, that was the end of the game. If you banished a whole U-Bell board, that was the end of the game. If you banished a whole Fiendsmith Cashier board, that was the end of the game. So, now, the thing is, 2025 Yu-Gi-Oh! Is just on such a different axis. Decks have so much follow-up, they have so much recursion, they even have ways to retrieve cards from the Banish Zone now between Kusanagi and Marshmallow. So as strong as this type of removal is, it is not at its best. Which is unfortunate, because I love this card so much, man. It just feels such a niche. And again, I want to reiterate, this card is not difficult to resolve, like, mathematical-wise. You do not need to be a math expert to resolve this card. A lot of the technical play that comes with this card is the ability to, again, manage hand and field resources. So, prime example real quick is, let's just say there is a total of 13 cards between hand and field. And your opponent has they have a level 7 monster that you want to banish, right? If you activate a Welcome Labyrinth and they Ash Blossom it, you could chain the cannon there to have 12 cards, but there's not really a configuration that does it. If you let it resolve and then you get to 11, now you can activate cannon, reveal a level 3 and 2 rank 4s. That adds up to 7 to match the 7 on board, and then it banishes their field. So there's a whole bunch of small intricacies with this card. Like, again, you can do things like, while a card is still face up on the board, you can flip up cannon so that it still counts for it, so that you can reveal the right number from your extra deck. And it does have some tug and pull as well. Specifically with cards like the Furniture Pieces and Backjack, where they kind of want you to minus immediately and get rewarded later, so it makes cannon a little bit more difficult to resolve. All in all, is to say that I think Kai is up to something when he says, this card is good going second in Labyrinth right now. I think that there is a very small piece of the metagame that really interacts with this card in a profitable way, and a ton of decks, even if they don't automatically lose the game when this resolves, they lose so many resources that it puts your deck, which is inherently weaker than your opponent's deck, immediately back into the game. And so, if that's the conclusion that we've come to, we now have to decide, what's next? What do we want our deck to look like if we're going to play this card? And I've got 2 sample deck lists for you to discuss. So the first one is going to be more aligned with what happened when this card was first released or was first discovered in the TCG. And it's, whoops, that's the wrong list. I apologize. We'll get to that one later. It's Stun. So I'm not going to do too in-depth of a profile here, but I'm going to very quickly go over what this deck is aiming to do. So as you can see in this deck, there's no Ariana, no Arias, no furniture pieces. We're not aiming to exploit that half of the deck. What we're aiming to exploit is Equation Cannon going second as a pseudo board breaker. And the way that we're accommodating that is by playing basically Lady Control. These are the only win conditions in the deck, and these are the only welcome cards that we play. There's no field spell, there's no furniture, none of that stuff. And the way that we're accommodating that is we basically have 6 copies of Cannon, and we have ways to reuse Cannon. And on top of that, as I said earlier, if your opponent doesn't have a monster with a level or a rank, this card's not activatable. But if you give them a Lava Golem, that is a level 8 monster. And 8 is really important because 8 lines up really well in the metagame between Mitsurugi and Dracotail, both primarily having boss monsters that are level 8. So it makes activating the cannon really easy. The other cards in the deck are just consistency tools, traps that generally go +1 or more than +1. Really the only card that doesn't do that in this deck is Blackout Lass. And you could argue that this card should even be some other trap. It could be a card like Ice Dragon's Prison, or it could be like Starry Dragon's Knight, or Archfiend's Ghastly Glitch. There's a ton of different cards that it could be, right? This is just an experimental deck list, right? This is all just theory. And really the highlight of this deck is Metaltronus, which seems really weird in a stun deck like this, where you're aiming to mass disrupt your opponent. But here's the thing with this card. It pairs really well with Lava Golem because it can summon a level 8 Fiend from the deck. But also, all the Mitsurugi monsters are level 8 Dark. So if you Tronus one of the Mitsu monsters, you get any of the ladies for free. Any of them. So it means that if your engine gets disrupted, you can still find ways to play the game with Metaltronus. Not to mention that because of Cannon requiring Xyz and Fusions, you can adjust the extra deck however you desire to play Tronus targets. So as you can see in the extra here, I have Ripper, Herald, and Arthalion as like the mass targets. But you could go even deeper. You could play Yummy Snatchy. You could play a White Binder. You could play a Perfume Dancer as your 6 fusion. There's so many things that you can do with this card that really synergize with this deck. Because again, we are aiming to mass disrupt our opponent. This card trades, so it trades with a monster on board by negating its effect and then gives you a monster from your deck. So you are going 1-for-1 in that exchange, but you are getting a piece of engine that is really hard for your opponents to interact with, or it's getting you resources from grave. And if you ever pair Lava Golem plus Tronus, you can break almost any board in the game. Like, I'm being serious. And then very quickly, the rest of the deck is just normal stun tools. So we have some card advantage here in Duality and Demise, just to make sure that we're finding the relevant pieces of the deck. Because we don't have any of the traditional Labyrinth cards, Skill Drain is excellent. And it's not its best against Mitsu, but it's very good against Yummy, and it can be good against Dracotail if they don't have exactly Urgula to pop. Daruma Cannon is still one of the best traps in the game. Obviously, Equation Cannon is the heart and soul of this deck. Trap Trick, so that you can go get the cannon. Torrential to go plus. Impulse is the best trap ever made. Solemn Strike is actually really good in this deck, because not only does it function going first, it functions going second, and it's a card that can negate Ash and Bell, which if your welcome traps get Ash or Bell, that's really annoying, because now you can't find a win condition. This makes it to where you can force through your trap, go get a monster, and then continue the game. And then, like I said, the last 2 cards in the deck are Blackout. I'm not sure if they should be Blackout. They could be Punishment, Ice Dragon's Prison, a whole bunch of other different normal traps. If you have any idea for what card this should be, let me know in the comment section down below, because I really want to continue innovating on this deck and making it the best that I can make it. The extra deck is all for Math Cannon, so it has to be Fusions and Xyz monsters. So right now I'm currently playing Fusions 2 through 6 and Xyz monsters rank 2 through 5. And you can adjust this however you feel like. Really the only debate is, do you want rank 2 Xyz versus rank 6? Because if you play 2 rank 6s, it means that you can banish a level 8 monster on 14 cards. The issue with that, though, is if they've gotten that far already, your deck just doesn't have enough innate card advantage to catch up to that. So it's better to play 2 rank 2s and a rank 6 to banish a level 8 on 12 cards, which is a lot more manageable for this deck to deal with. And then the last 2 cards in the extra are kind of flex slots. Like I said, because of Tronus, I wanted 2 monsters that I could actually use as Tronus targets. Things that are very problematic for this deck to deal with. stuff like Arthalion that can get back cards like Ash and Bell, and Herald is just a massive pain for this deck. But you could play cards like Typhon, you could play a rank 8, you could go deeper into the Math Cannon. There's so many things that you can do with this card. I'm sorry, 1 second. My apologies there, everybody. So, that is what a stun-oriented deck looks like. And the side deck, just very quickly, it's 9 board breakers. Again, you can pick and choose which ones you want to play. If you end up playing Dogmatica Punishment, you could play Fleur-de-Lis in the side deck. Super Poly and Evenly, again, they're cards that trade for more than one card on your opponent's board. And they give you Super Poly gives you a monster, so you're not actually going minus. And then we have some going first cards in Different Dimension Ground. Draco Tailflame, this card's actually really bad in this deck because of the uptick in Double Cyclone, but that's a niche thing. I mostly wanted ways to prevent back row destruction. These should probably just be Lord of the Heavenly Prisons. That card's actually really good at a deck like this that doesn't have a lot of engine. So you can Lord, protect your back row from removal, and then when you Lord, you can Lord to go get engine and then play on the next turn. And then Anti-Spell and Judgment are just the God cards. So that's why they're in the deck. So this is the first version of the deck, and I want to very quickly go over pros and cons. So the pros of this deck are that it doesn't really care about non-engine being played in your opponent's deck. It doesn't care about Fua. It doesn't care about Droll. It doesn't care about Nibiru. It doesn't care about Dark Ruler no more. It doesn't care about Thrust. It doesn't care about Talents. Almost every piece of non-engine in your opponent's deck has no text. Literal 0 text in the matchup. Pro number 2 is that it plays a lot of cards that meta decks aren't particularly prepared to deal with. It's really hard to figure out how to navigate a turn when you're getting hit with a Math Cannon, or a Torrential, or a Daruma, Black Goat, like all these cards, right? So you have the edge in the fact that your opponent is just very ill-prepared to deal with a trap strategy. And number 3, you get to play some insanely powerful non-engine yourself. You get to play cards like Lava Golem, Metaltronus, Skill Drain, Super Poly, Evenly, all that stuff, right? So those are the pros. Here are the cons of this deck. Number 1, it's very slow. Very, very slow. Your games are going to be long, they're going to be grindy, and there isn't really a good way to just close the door. Unlike traditional Labyrinth decks that just have big monsters, your only real way to win in this deck is Lady Labyrinth. And don't get me wrong, she does end the game, just not particularly fast. Really, the quickest way you win this game is by lovely resetting the same trap over and over again. So once your opponent decides they can't beat that trap, they just scoop it up and you go to the next game. Con number 2 is that we were trying to improve this deck going second with the extra cannons and stuff, but at the end of the day, you are playing 27 magenta cards. Going second is just going to not be as good for this deck. I've done everything I can to make this deck better going second for what its premise is, but it might not be enough. The only real way that you can fix this deck going second is by playing cards like Arius, Fuelos, Nibiru, and maybe other hand traps. But at that point, you're taking away from the strength of Simultaneous Equation Cannon and its ability to pair with other trap cards to truly break a board. And con number 3, this deck is really weak into spell. This version of the deck is really weak into mass spell trap removal. If cards like Lightning Storm, Feather Duster, Evenly Matched, even Double Cyclone start rising in popularity, or just decks like Artmage or Ryziel that have repeatable spell trap removal and engine, it's going to be a real problem for this deck. The strength of this deck, again, is to capitalize on your engine, going 1-for-1 with your opponent, and then a blowout trap to end the game. Whether that trap be Daruma to book everything, Math Cannon to banish, Torrential to wipe, or even just a Solemn Strike on a key monster effect, that is what the true power in this deck is. So, but in order to do that, you have to have 4 cards in the back row. So if your opponent just has Storm or Duster, you can chain what you can chain, but that kind of just ends the game for you. The game is mostly lost. So that's variant number 1 of this deck. Let's talk about variant number 2, which is a more traditional furniture version of this deck. Now, as you can see, this list is already way different. Less magenta cards, and a lot more going second potential with the furniture plus backjack interaction. Now, for those who don't know, when you go Furniture, discard Backjack, you're going to set one of your 5 welcome traps from the deck. Backjack will then trigger on a new chain to look at the top 3 cards of your deck and rearrange them. Because you're playing 19 trap cards, it's pretty easy for you to find a trap, which can then be activated when you banish the Backjack from your graveyard. So it just means that not only is it easier to find Engine, because you just go get the Engine trap directly from the deck, you then get to immediately activate one of your trap cards on your opponent's turn, whether it be Daruma, Math, or one of the other blowout traps. The other thing about this deck, too, is that because it has cards like Ariana and Furniture Pieces and Arias, you can actually do some combos on the first turn. It's not like the stun deck where you're just setting 5 and passing. You can do things like Lovely Rip, and if you wanted to use the 2 flex slots in the extra deck, you could do things like Anima SP to like end on SP Lovely plus plus trap, so they're down a card in hand, and then you have like 4 disruptions. That's neither here nor there, but it does give the deck a higher ceiling because you just have more Engine in your deck. But really, the strength of this deck is being able to turn 0 cards like Cannon through hitting it off a Backjack or Arias. Again, there's 6 copies of Math Cannon in the deck between Cannon itself and Trap Trick. Activating it on your opponent's turn when they least expect it, especially while they're playing, if you hit key Engine points or if you hit key one-ofs, again, you might just win the game on the spot. That is a super powerful interaction that a deck like this gets to capitalize that very few other decks in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Get to. And then again, as for the extra deck, it's all Math Cannon targets. So again, 2 through 6, 2, 3, 4, and 5. You can pick whatever ones you want. They really don't matter. The only ones I would say is that because you have cards like Ariana and some Furniture Pieces, you might want to play a couple that you can summon in the really random cases where you need to. I just picked some of my favorite cards, or ones that I have regional wins with. So, for example, I have Exciton and Baguska are both in decks that I've topped regionals with. Nash Knight and Ripper are just some of my favorite cards in the game. Well, not Ripper as much, but I do like Nash Knight a lot. Stalio is obviously my boy, the GOAT. And Gin Buster was in my Sprite deck when I topped in Columbus a couple of years ago. And the last 2 flex slots are Chaos Angel and Muckracker, just for the repeatable removal. And if a Lady or Lovely gets stuck in grave, you can go Muckracker, discard one of your extra cards, and get it back and continue playing. And the side deck is Phantasme, Nibiru, and Bestials. These cards are great into pretty much every meta deck. Malice, Lunalite, Yummy variants, Mitsu variants. And then the other cards are DDG, as a Floodgate Eradicator. Again, this can single-handedly win the game against both Draco Tail and Mitsurugi. And then the God cards of Anti-Spell and Judgment. So similar to Stun, I want to talk about the strengths and weaknesses of this deck. So strength number 1 is that it's got a higher ceiling. You just have more Engine cards. Strength number 2 is the ability to play on turn 0. So unlike Stun, where you're basically playing a board breaker deck, where you're just saying to your opponent, have fun, play as much as you want. I will interact with you on your next turn when I set my hand and pass. This deck gets to actually play with the opponent on their turn, doing things like Arias for trap, or Fuaing them, or going Furniture, discard Backjack. Those are all really key pivotal points. and the third strength is that this deck has no problem closing the game out. Between cards like Chaos Angel, Lady, Lovely, and just all the Furnitures coming back, killing them is incredibly simple. And now I'm going to talk about the cons of this deck. So one of the biggest cons of this version of the deck is, unlike the Stun variant where you don't care about the non-engine, the non-engine is so good into this deck. It's so good. Ash, Bell, and Impulse are way better when your opponent is investing multiple cards to find engine. If you have to Furniture pitch a card to go get Welcome, and Welcome gets Ash or Impulse, brother, pack it up. You're down 3 cards. You're done playing. Or if you get Fuad. This deck is actually kind of annoying if it gets Fuad, because you don't want to have to chain all your traps at once. You're giving up a ton of value. So if they Fua you, they're going to get multiple draws, or you have to give up a resource. Also, Forbidden Droplet, really good into this deck. And unlike the Stun variant of the deck, cards like Bestials are really good into this deck because you can shut off the Furniture follow-up. There's just a ton of cards that the Stun deck doesn't care about that this deck cares about, which is a really big con. And the third con is that the trap pools doesn't go deep enough. So unlike the Stun deck where you have cards like Torrential, Strike, and Ice Dragon's Prison to truly capitalize on the what's the word I'm looking for? To truly capitalize on the fact that your trap cards are all going to go +1 or more than +1. This deck doesn't have that. A lot of its strength comes from the inherent synergy between all of the cards, instead of just trying to play the highest power level of cards that it can. So sometimes you're going to have games where you just get caught with your pants down, for lack of a better term, where you don't draw furniture plus backjack, your opponent full combos you, and your deck is just full of cards that don't do anything. But then inherently, you're also going to have games where you win the die roll, you do full combo, you lovely rip a card, you've got 4 back row, and the game is effectively over. In both scenarios, though, both these decks exploit Equation Cannon in very different ways, actually. The stun deck is exploiting Cannon in the fact that it's going to board break in mass. This deck wants to exploit Equation Cannon in doing it during your opponent's combo to mess them up. So it's just two halves of the same coin. They're both trying to be these control-y style decks with stun elements to them. They're just trying to exploit the same card in two different ways. So to wrap this all back around to the card in the deck, clearly it's the same idea of it wants a trap to mass remove cards on your opponent's field, but it's just using it in two different shells. This deck is going to find it a lot easier between Lady setting it from deck and Trap Trick and Lovely resetting it. This deck is trying to find it on its opponent's turn with Furniture plus Backjack, or again, Arias plus Trap Trick. Now, I will admit, currently what I have sleeved up is a list very close to this. The side deck is a little bit different. I have Fualoses instead of Spear Modes, which I don't know if it's better or not. I'm still trying to figure out that out, because Fu is not great in this deck because you're not drawing into cards that interact with your opponent. So, like, if your opponent is just trying to play Ignorant, and you Fu with them, and they just give you 12 cards, that's just not good enough. Your deck just doesn't have anything that Fu can draw into. I would rather have cards that can actually deal with what my opponent makes after they make it. Like I said, I'm playing Lord of the Heavenly Prison over Draco Tailflame. And the extra deck might need an extra target or two for Metal Tronus if it's going to continue to play this card. Or maybe this card should be something else. I could easily be convinced of something else in the main deck here. Like I said, I just really think the synergy between Lava Golem, Tronus, and Mitsurugi cards is just too good to pass up. Being able to make it so that Cannon's live and you can go find Engine while also just like not being that bad of a card into other decks is really good. But again, if there's something else that you think is better for this deck, please let me know. Because like I said, I'm trying to experiment with these decks and make them the best I can. So I've played both these decks at locals, and I will say that I've liked the stun variant more just for the fact that it's better into the non-engine that everyone's playing. It might be weaker as a deck because the ceiling is lower, but I like dodging every relevant piece of cardboard in my opponent's deck. That being said, both these lists are far from perfect. There's a ton of work that could be put into these decks. I just wanted to share the concept of what I think the deck list should look like with you guys, and then you can figure out what it takes for this deck to not even necessarily be a rogue contender, but just be a functional deck in 2025 Yu-Gi-Oh! Because that's what kills me about this deck, is that it's just non-functional. The game plan is just not what it takes to be a good deck in 2025 Yu-Gi-Oh! So with that out of the way, let's go back to the home screen here. Let's just talk for a few minutes between the two of us, you know? So, as I said earlier, this video is basically a video essay about Simultaneous Equation Cannon, how it brought me back into the game, and what remains for the future. Now, there are a couple of different things that might happen in 2026. Right now, what it looks like is that Yu-Gi-Oh! Is still going to be on the back burner for me as a hobby. I've come to the conclusion that Konami has not given me a reason to play this game competitively, but I still want to enjoy it with my friends. And so I'm just going to play the cards and the decks that I like, even if they are not the most competitively viable in a tournament. Or if they are, I'm going to use them to the best of my ability. That's part of why I love this card so goddamn much. Even though it just seems like a goofy, trap card, the way that it works and the way that it requires you to deck build just brings me so much joy. Like, again, there is no better feeling than activating this card, watching your opponent squirm as they realize what's about to happen to them. They can read it as many times as they want, but their stuff is going away. Now, as for the channel, I'm still going to upload sporadically. You know, funnily enough, this video itself was kind of just a thought experiment that I had while I was in the shower and getting ready for work. I just have a lot of thoughts that I wanted to get out there, you know, and kind of hold myself accountable for making 2026 just a better year for myself. You know, I've kind of treated the last few years as just kind of hogwash and just like there's time passing by. But slowly realizing that I need a reason to keep doing what I'm doing, otherwise I'm just a mindless sheep, has kind of brought me purpose in the sense that I now feel like I'm taking my actions with a plan in mind. And that's kind of really just all I want to do for next year is if I decide to play Yu-Gi-Oh! Casual or competitively, it's going to be for a reason. If I decide that next year I want to play at the highest level and I want to play with the best in the game, then I'm going to put time and effort to doing that. If I decide that all I care about is just playing some regionals with the boys and winning an OTS, I'm going to focus on that. Or if my time is best spent not playing the game, but helping others achieve their goals, either through helping them with deck building, helping them with technical play, just giving them access to more resources, then that's what I'm going to do. It's kind of up in the air, really, as to what the year truly holds, because obviously there's still, 40 days, 45 days before the end of the year. Anything can happen. But, no, I'm hopeful. There's a path forward, I think. And really just as a closer, I want to remind everyone that Yu-Gi-Oh! Would not be what it is if it weren't for the people that we meet along the way. If it wasn't for the boys, and it wasn't for my locals crowd, there's no reason for me to play this game. There just isn't. And the fact that I get to hang out with guys like this and just play cards, it's fucking awesome. I'm going to be honest. And as one last word to one of my favorite magenta cards, keep doing what you're doing, man. You're doing great. So that's going to do it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. Shout out to Kai for posting this in the Discord and giving me the idea to revisit this card and this deck as a whole. I'm going to link Kai's Twitter and YouTube channel in the description of this video if you want to go check him out and go give him some love. One of the Labyrinth Goats for sure. I'm going to have download DB deck lists for both of the sample lists that I put in this video. That way you can keep up to date with the changes as they happen and as I figure out where both shells want to go in terms of the end goal. And then as always, my Facebook, my Twitter, and my Twitch are going to be in the description of this video as well. I'm probably going to take up live streaming just as a small part-time thing, just something to where if I get the itch to play DB Ladder, I might live stream it. If I get the edge to, play some other video game with some friends, I might do that. It just kind of depends. But yeah, that about does it. So once again, thank you so much for sticking to the end and watching the whole video. I appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. Shout out to Simultaneous Equation Cannon, the best trap ever made. And that's going to do it. My name is Nick from Team Nitro YGO, and I'll see you all in the next video.